Welcome to another episode of Sustainable Goat. I'm Steve Cassingham, and I interview the greatest of all time in sustainability from the past, present, and into the future. In this episode, I talk with Zach Helmanaik, co-founder and CEO of Nomadics. If you have been in an REI recently, you may have seen towels that have some really awesome designs. And these are Nomadics towels. They've been leading the charge in creating a better towel that also is better for the planet. So let's dive into the conversation with Zach and hear their story. Thanks for being a part of this podcast today. I'm excited to talk to you and kind of learn your story. I came across Nomadics towels actually with my buddy. We were on a trip last year, and he was like, "Dude, have you seen this company? They make this awesome towel out of plastic water bottles. Like, it is the coolest thing ever. You got to check these guys out." And so that was when I first experienced you guys. And I mean, it seems like you guys have kind of been on an upswing. But I'd love to hear about your story. How'd you eventually decide to co-found this company? What's kind of your background?
So yeah, I mean the genesis of it actually started when we were living in Colorado as ski bums. And so it was me and my two partners. One of them was my Craigslist roommate, and then the other one was dating a friend of ours at the time. And we started going on camping trips while we were working at the mountain. And then at the end of our season, we decided to go on this really long camping trip through the deserts of Utah and go towards California. And we were in this 1998 Subaru that was packed to the gills with all of our ski equipment, literally all the clothes that I owned, and then also our camping gear. And we were just looking at this packed Subaru and saying, like, hey, we could probably design gear that was more multifunctional than what we have in this car, so that you don't need to own, so many different jackets and so many different types of shoes and etc. And we just got really into the gear curation and wanted our kits to be dialed so that we could go anywhere and do anything we wanted, and we wouldn't have to carry so much stuff. So that's how we came up with the ethos of own less, do more. And when we started looking at products that would fit this model and solve this problem, the towel was actually a really interesting one that was one of the biggest problems. So if you were going to do yoga, you could get a yoga towel, but it had dots on the bottom. And so you didn't want to dry off with it. You didn't want to take it to the beach. If you had a beach towel, it was like a big cotton towel that absorbed water and also sand and was huge. So you couldn't pack it and take it elsewhere. And then if you had a travel towel, back at this time, it was only those micro fiber kind of chamois towels. Yeah, exactly. It's like a blue square.
Yeah.
And if you took those on more than one trip, you noticed that they got totally disgusting and were, not comfortable to dry off with. And so we started developing a towel that could hit all three of those categories: yoga, travel, and beach. And we found that a towel that could do all three of those things could really do anything.
Mm-hmm. That's super cool. And what kind of got you into that type of thought process and going on a ski trip? What's a little bit of your background as a person? Where are you originally from, and kind of how did you end up where you were when you were ski bumming through Colorado?
Sure. So I'm originally from Northern Virginia and the DC area. And I grew up in the suburbs there, had a fairly standard suburban lifestyle. I was not an outdoorsy kid necessarily. I went on camping trips, but I didn't have all my equipment, for instance, and that kind of thing. So I was playing sports and really just focused on sports growing up. And my first real exposure to, these other types of activities was in Colorado, where I started out as a beginner skier, and by the end I could do black diamonds and all that kind of stuff. So that was my first mountain experience. And then I had never really camped in the desert until we were in Utah, and I had never been to California until we, reached the Pacific during that trip. So
what inspired this trip to Colorado? I mean, coming from Virginia, what was kind of that Was it just like, hey, let's go ski for a season, or?
That originally started because I was studying abroad in college in Barcelona. And during that trip, I took side trips to all other types of areas. I went to 13 different countries, I think, during that time. And a couple of the areas were Morocco, and then I also went to Turkey. And at that time, George Bush was president. And the sentiment towards Americans in Europe and also in those more Muslim regions was not good. Like there was a lot of Americans that were with us that were telling people they were Canadians because if you were American, it would like start an argument. Essentially, is it was my experience, and so when I got back, I thought the best thing that I could do to solve that problem that affected me directly was to work on Obama's campaign. And so I went out with a friend to Colorado, worked on Obama's campaign out in Morrison County, Colorado, and lived in Evergreen during that time. And we were full-time volunteers. And then at the end of the campaign, Obama won, everything was great. And we were like, what do we do now? And so me and that friend drove out to Vail and just started walking into ski shops and saying, hey, do you have any work for the winter? And they made us assistant managers on the spot. We had no experience like fitting skis or like, telling people what length of ski to get or how to adjust them or anything. And they just gave us manager jobs right on the spot.
Oh, that's so awesome. That's super cool. And Vail, no less. Like it's beautiful up there, and skiing that mountain's incredible. There's nothing like it.
Yeah, absolutely. The culture so I worked at Beaver Creek, and like Chase, for instance, my co-founder worked at Vail, and the culture there of like ski bum life and bartering for everything, and waking up. I would wake up at 6 a.m. and walk uphill up the mountain in the snow because the buses weren't running yet. So it's like one of those,
Uphill both ways.
exactly. But yeah, it was like 0 degrees, 6 a.m. walking up the mountain to work every day. And it was like a really amazing time for sure.
What was that kind of like for you to have that experience? I mean, you come from kind of a suburban traveling background, but suddenly you're just like, I'm literally immersed in nature every single day, and just this is what I'm doing. Like, how did that feel for you?
Felt really good. I mean, kind of felt like natural to adopt a lifestyle in the mountains. In no way did I feel like a fish out of water. It was just like totally fun for me, and I like following these expert skiers. My friends were experts, and I would just follow them everywhere on the mountain, and we would be going through trees, and we'd be going, off the trail, like down these runs that only locals knew where they were. And it was like you just really felt like you were out there in nature, and that was the first time I had experienced that, and it felt really good.
That's really, really cool. So when you guys were sitting there and you're like, okay, outdoor gear, towel, how did you go about even trying to solve the problem? Like, what was the first step? Was it material research? Was it what makes a towel not good? What was that process like when you guys were starting to think about how do we solve that problem?
Yeah, so I mean, it was like a pretty classic bootstrap entrepreneur story. So my partner Chase, he is the product guy, he's the designer, and so he started, he had criteria that he laid out for the towel, and in terms of like it can't stretch because it needs to be good for yoga, it needs to be this absorbent, sand needs to react to it this way. And so he started working with factories overseas, and because we wanted to make it out of certified post-consumer recycled plastics too, which at the time were, I mean, you still can't make the fabric that we make here in the States. The equipment's not here, and the raw material is not here.
Yeah, and why that decision to now you see a lot of products that are made of post-recycled material. But, when you guys started doing it, that wasn't common. What was that decision to do that? Because, I would imagine it would have been easier to do it if you didn't do it that way.
Yeah, it definitely would have been easier. It would have been cheaper. You could have gotten probably a better product at that time. But the origin of the company is something that is close to nature. We appreciate nature. We appreciate the places that we go recreate. And so for us, I don't think it was ever really an option to not go as eco-friendly a route as we could. Own less, do more is also a statement on overconsumption and consumerism. And so, for that was something that we were minimalists. We are one backpack type people when we go on trips. And so to create something that wasn't in line with that didn't make sense to us. And so we made a very quick decision about that and decided to go for not just recycled, but the material that we get is certified post-consumer recycled, which is an important distinction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if you want to dive a little bit more into that distinction, because I think, for people that aren't as familiar with buying products or any type of eco-friendly alternative material space, it's very easy to be confused, and there's a lot of subtlety in it. I'd love if you could dive into that a little bit.
Yeah, so I think that when we work with our suppliers, we look for suppliers that are certifying their raw materials and their finished goods, that they have a certification that says that it is post-consumer, meaning that this was trash essentially. It was recycled, it was used water bottles, for instance. And I think if you're not doing, and that's the bare minimum in my opinion. So if you're not doing that and making sure you're getting, materials certified and checking the sources, then it's possible that, recycled in their eyes could mean they made plastic bottles and then broke them down and they were never post-consumer. Truthfully, I don't know all the different tricks and things that could be involved in greenwashing along the manufacturing process, but that's one thing that we have heard from our suppliers, and that's why we go for suppliers that have certifications.
Nice. Yeah. And so you guys were kind of like, okay, you found your supplier, and then now what? You guys actually have to start a company. Had any of you guys started a company before?
At the time of the Kickstarter campaign, we had all worked for small businesses and had been kind of at the close to the ownership level of other small businesses. So we had a good sense for how it works. But I don't believe any of us had started businesses before at that time. But we, when we started, we sourced the material, we got the product, and we launched on Kickstarter. And up until that point, we weren't even sure if there was going to be a business, right? Because it might not work. And Kickstarter at that time was a very different animal. We didn't pay a penny for advertising. We didn't have a penny to spend on advertising. And we ended up on the Kickstarter homepage organically because, the Kickstarter audience liked the product. Whereas, now my understanding is like people spend, tens of thousands of dollars on marketing their Kickstarter campaigns. And it's just a very different thing now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Kickstarter. I remember when it first started, it was very scrappy. Like it was all audience based, and if you landed that homepage, like that was huge. Do you guys remember just that campaign? Because most of the time it's kind of like a 30-day sprint where you're like, oh man, let's just go ham and do whatever we can. What were those days like as you guys were building this? Because you guys were just kind of like, hey, let's see if this product will stick and let's try it.
Yeah. So at the time, it was actually a very exciting time in our lives. So I was living in Washington, D.C. I was a State Department contractor, and I had a really cool job. I was traveling to embassies abroad and consulting them on their passport systems. So I would go to Central Asia, I would go to East Asia, I would go to South America. And then that contract took us off the road because they wanted to green the contract and stop flying so much. And so coincidentally, right when that happened, Chase and Hunter were out in California, and they said, "Hey, remember that idea we've been talking about? Well, we think it's time to give it a go." So I flew out to California, and we basically started the video and the shoot and sampling and photoing and everything involved with that. And I remember I had a prearranged trip to go to Europe, and we were editing the video the night before, and we were like, this is, and I was the video editor at this time, and it's like midnight, and me and Chase are sitting there, and we were like, what, this is just as good as it's going to get. And we pressed submit, and the next day I woke up early and I flew to Europe, and I didn't necessarily think that anything was going to come from it. I thought, it was I thought it was kind of a long shot that, people were going to like buy a lot of these towels. And I remember checking the Kickstarter when I was in Poland, and it had beat its record, or beat the funding goal. And, thinking like, oh, wow, when I go home, we really have to figure out how to make all these towels.
Yeah. What was your original funding goal, and what did it kind of end up being in the long term?
Man, that is actually a great question that I don't remember. I want to say that it was around $20,000 or $30,000, and we ended up raising 100 and something thousand between Kickstarter and Indiegogo. So we basically tripled I believe we tripled or quadrupled our production that we intended to do. And then we had extra stock to start trying to sell to stores.
Yeah.
Wow, that's super. Do you remember, so when you guys actually got your first shipment, I mean, you guys have so many designs now, and so many different product lines. What was the original product line? Was it just a plain color, and that's what it was? What did it kind of start with?
So I believe it was 4 or 5 designs, and they were travel inspired prints, and a few of them are still in the assortment today. So we have a Baja kind of Mexican blanket looking towel that is still in the line today, and a print called Mud Cloth, which is still in the line today. So yeah, we had those 4 or 5 towels that were on the Kickstarter campaign, and we ended up selling them for a long time just in the wholesale channel. And then we also made these shirts that said "damn hippie" on them, and those were like the add-on gifts, and we gave those away at like events for a long time after that. So like if you saw us at Wanderlust Festival in Squaw Valley, then you would have gotten a damn hippie tank with your purchase.
So did you guys kind of stick on kind of your marketing side and kind of growing your audience? Was it purely that outdoor audience, or was it more, you're going after the ski and then the surf and then the yoga? Like, was there a strategy, or was it just kind of like, let's just get it out there and see how many people love it, like it, and share it, and we'll just take it from there?
Well, we always had a few core audiences that we knew that we had in our customer base, and one was yoga, because it was advertised as a yoga towel, and yogis use towels, like a lot of them. Like yogis have like 5 of these towels that they put on their yoga mat every day of the week. So that was a big audience for us at first. And then beach and surf is just kind of like an obvious audience because it's a towel, and so that's grown a lot with us. And then outdoor that's what was like near and dear to our heart. And our goal was to always get into REI. When we were on the road trip, we would, stop in every REI we saw and, buy some piece of camping gear that, we had been missing, like a stove or a titanium cup or, something ridiculous like that. And so those were our core audiences, and they really are still pretty core to our audience, yoga, beach, outdoor. And then since then we've expanded into different audiences, like boating, for instance, is a really great audience for us because the towel is packable. You can fit more of them on your boat, and then all the other, quick dry and absorbency and that kind of thing.
Yeah, what makes the towel so good? Like, I mean it. So from firsthand experience, it's a phenomenal towel. Like it's amazing, and you're almost like, is this magic? Like, how does it work? But like, what is it that makes it so good and such a differentiating product in the market?
Yeah, so we came up with this blend of material after a lot of trial and error, and what we landed on was a material we call micro terry. And basically, what that is it's woven to mimic a terry towel, but it has really tiny loops in it. And so what that does is it allows it to be absorbent, but it's also thinner than a terry towel. So the water can evaporate more easily, so it dries quicker. And then also there's like some strength and anti-sand and anti-dirt properties to the way that it's woven that allow it to be something a little bit different than any other towel out there. And then another thing that's really like the unsung hero of the towel attributes is that because it's quick dry, and for whatever reason our blend of material, it just doesn't stink like a lot of other similar products and similar recycled polyester products. And so you can really go a pretty long time without washing it. And you can, like, if you go surfing and throw it in your truck afterwards, it's not the same result as throwing a different like cotton towel in your truck.
Which is always the worst. That's the worst. You're like, oh man, I gotta wash this. This is horrible. So, I mean, now you guys are in REI. I mean, what was that kind of distribution like? I know you guys go direct to consumer. I know you have wholesale. Where are you guys actually available and sold? And what did that building process look like for you guys? Because it definitely wasn't overnight that you got an REI, but I would imagine there was a little bit of a party thrown when that deal came through.
Yeah, I mean, there's been many moments where we celebrated a win like that, and then the next day you're back at it and realize you have a new goal. But as of today, we're in a few major retailers that I'll name are like REI, West Marine for the boating audience, and then we're in board rider stores. So if you go to Hawaii, we're in Honolulu Surf Shop, for instance. And so those are some of the bigger retailers that we're in. And then we're also in the trendy specialty retail stores in lots of towns all over America. We have a rep groups in every state. And so yeah, we're available lots more places this year than we were last year, and the same goes for the year before. We definitely bootstrapped the growth of the company. We didn't bring on major investments. We barely spent any money on marketing. It was a very word of mouth. When we saw a good rep, we would hire the rep to service their region. But yeah, it took a long time. And now we have a really outstanding rep force. And I get texts almost daily from friends around the country that say, hey, you're in my local yoga studio or my local surf shop. And it's really cool to see. It feels so different than it did, a few years ago.
Have you seen one just out and about town where you don't know the person, you don't know anything, and you're like, hey, that's our towel? Do you remember the first time that happened?
Oh man, I don't remember the first time it happened, but it happens all the time now because we have more. There was once a time where every sale was going through myself or one of my partners, and now we have in-house salespeople and sales reps, and we have a custom products team, and so it happens all the time that I see a product that I didn't know was in that store, or a brand has a custom product that I didn't know we made. So yeah, it happens all the time, and it's really cool every time still.
That's awesome. Yeah, and what do you guys kind of looking to do in the future with the brand? What are kind of the goals of the brand? Do you guys want to expand into more things into that gear lifestyle that you guys started with?
Yeah, I think so. Our priorities today, because we're actually a lot smaller company than probably people think we are, is to we're really, building for the future, and part of that is to keep building on towels and the products that we have. So we have blankets and towels and ponchos, and we're growing really fast in all those categories, and so we're going to keep growing short term in those categories. And we've hired a bunch of people this year. We'll probably hire more people. We're going to invest more in marketing. And so growing the company as you see it today is the short term goal, but we do have some ideas for other products that once our customer base decides they want those things from us, then we will we'll walk down that road. But I don't have anything I can share today, unfortunately.
Totally. Still in the think tank and the R&D and the brains of you guys, I bet.
Yeah, but I will say keep watching, because we will have something in the future.
That's awesome. So when it comes to designs, I mean, towel design has been a thing for a little while, especially more on like the cotton beach towel side of things. Not so much in the, yoga or anything like that. When you guys think about doing designs, I mean, you mentioned that, one of your original ones, they're all inspired by nature. Is that something that's always in the design process for you guys?
Yeah, so I'll say the design process has evolved a lot over time, because we have these core bestsellers that always sell, and they're in our major retailers, and we try to never go out of stock of them. But then every season, our audience and our retailers also expect something a little bit fresh. And so we have a few different categories that we focus on to expand in each season. So like we have a line of basic color carriers, which are the new colors for the season. It might be a similar print that you saw before, but it's like some of your more classic stripes and those kind of things in a new colorway. And then we have some of the more lifestyle trendy prints that we try to get in there, and we test them out. Sometimes they're really popular, so that might be like the florals, and still like earthy and still along the lines of nomadics, but we can kind of like get more creative and stretch the bounds of our design there a little bit. And then we also dive into some other interesting things, like we have a camo pattern that actually Patagonia requested we make a while ago, and we had camo ponchos in Patagonia, and so that kind of stuck around for a little while. So yeah, it's a constant design process. We're designing the new season at all times. Once we finish designing one, we're designing the next one. We're also designing like collab and limited release projects all the time. Mm-hmm. So we do try to stay true to our design aesthetic. And if you look at, I don't know if everyone can tell, but when you look at Nomadic's designs all in a line and you compare them to some other companies, you can tell that it's a Nomadic's pattern. Like we could pick it out if you showed a lineup, and they're all designed in-house for the most part. Chase, our co-founder, is still our principal designer, and then we also have a couple other designers that we work with, but everything is designed in-house. It's a Nomadic's pattern, and so there's like an aesthetic to that.
Yeah, that's awesome. And yeah, we didn't actually dive into this yet. Nomadics as a name, and kind of why the logo design and why the branding. What was kind of that thought process? Was there just kind of a conversation where you guys just threw a bunch of names on a whiteboard and were like, yeah, let's do that one?
Yeah, so the name Nomadics came from the root word, which is nomad, and that actually was because of the way we were living at the time. I mean, for the first few years of Nomadics, even when we were pitching REI, me and Chase were living in South America and working from coffee shops, and everything was being sent out of either Hunter's Garage or Amazon. And so we were, we weren't nomadic people, but we were living like that digital nomad lifestyle for a little bit. and had very minimal belongings. And so nomadics kind of fit that lifestyle that we were actually living. So the logo and the branding, if you our logo is a diamond, and the bottom of the diamond has some negative space, which is like basically some dashes out of it. And that stands for either a mountain or an island, and then it's reflected in water. So it's a mountain, and then on the bottom is the reflection in water. And that's to basically symbolize the brand's connection to the environment and to adventure travel and kind of where everything started.
That's so awesome. And you can definitely see that in the logo. Like even if, you don't have to go that deep, you can look at it and you can kind of get that feeling and emotion from it, which I think it's super important. I mean, it's becoming a part of nature, it's being in nature, and it's inspired and made from people's trash, which I think is so cool. What's your favorite part of the process? I mean, what do you value every single day about what you're doing?
Well, first of all, I'm really excited to build the company the way that we feel a company should be built. So there's all these, especially with the environmental issues that we see very tangibly these days, like wildfires and sea level rise and climate crisis and all this stuff. There's just some things that we feel are should be basic moving forward for companies, and we get the opportunity to do those things. And so as owners and as the CEO, I'm really excited that we're a social purpose corporation, and we can so that's a Washington designation, Washington State Social Purpose Corporation. And we can put environmental causes and social causes right into our articles of incorporation, so that if investors come along, we'll never be beholden to them to reduce our standards, for instance. So that's a special thing that we get to do. We're 1% for the Planet members, so 1% of our sales go back to cool organizations like Conservation Alliance to protect lots of different land conservation projects around the country. So those things are really cool. We also just pledged to become climate neutral. We'll become climate neutral next April in time for Earth Day. And so, building the company like that, and there's all these little things that we do also alongside of that really excite us. One thing that we just started doing is one of our 1% beneficiaries is the Ecology Center, which is it's the only organic farm left in Orange County, California, as I understand it. It's right down the street from us. And so we give these farm boxes. They have families that don't have access to good food, and so you can sponsor these families. And so we've sponsored 5 families this year to get farm boxes all year. And then we also internally we subsidize a farm box for all of our employees. So if you're an employee at Nomadics and you want to get the farm box, then you only have to pay, I think it's $12 a month or something like that, to get fresh organic vegetables delivered to the office. You pick it up at the office, and then you can take it home. So it's a really cool, local thing that we get to do. It's a cool thing for our employees, and it's like a better health insurance plan.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's access to really, really good, nourishing food. And I mean, the fact that you guys put all of that into your business model too, I think is so important, because it's a guiding, it's almost like a guiding principle for how you guys can navigate any challenge that comes up. Because as you guys grow, I mean, challenges come up in any business, but it kind of keeps you guys where you want to be and where you want to take the company. And I think that's hugely important, especially when it comes to you're helping solve bigger problems. I mean, you're taking trash, making it into a product, but then you're also on the other side of it, you're supporting the local community. And I think that's a part that's not focused on as much, I think, in a positive way, is the idea of locality, keeping whatever you can local, and giving back to your community, and keeping your community healthy.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's what we need to do to make improvements in the climate crisis tangible for people. It's saying that we need to stop the temperature from rising is too intangible. I think supporting a local farm and getting people to eat food that is healthy for themselves and the planet is a way more achievable method of getting people to make a change in their lives. So yeah, it's really important, and those are the things that we get excited about as owners, is getting to do things like that. Also, I should mention, when the pandemic hit, we had a lot of tough choices to make, because we had customers that were closing their doors. We had customers that just literally sent us emails and said, hey, we're not paying our bills for the foreseeable future. And, we have to decide as a business what to do with that. And one of the decisions we made was to stick by our employees and keep everyone for as long as we possibly could. And we did that, and everyone on our team refocused their energies on things that would help us through that particular crisis. And so there was people who were going in and shipping who didn't normally ship, or people were, focused on helping collect AR and that kind of stuff. And that was something that as owners, it felt really important, but that was like, I would have felt way worse if we had to get rid of people. And so being able to keep everyone during that time was something that we felt really good about.
That's incredible. And congrats to you guys for being able to make it through that and support your team. I think that speaks to what you guys as owners stand for and who you support. And I mean, the company culture that you guys have built, it comes across on the product too. And to be able to support your company that way, that's huge. And especially in a challenging time like this. I mean, it's been a wild ride for a lot of companies, and to start a company and to go through a scaling process and have to navigate that, it's kind of a curveball you don't see coming for sure. So if somebody's kind of looking to take their life and make it a little bit more sustainable, they're kind of like, I've been hearing a lot about this sustainability stuff, and like, I don't know, I'm kind of on board with it, kind of not, but you know what, maybe I'll do my part. What do you think that somebody can do if they're looking to kind of just make small steps? What would you say to someone of like, hey, maybe you should start with doing this? I know it's kind of an intangible problem that you don't quite see the whole picture of, because very few people do. Here are some tangible things that you could do.
Yeah, so I actually have been thinking about this recently for our employees and how we can help them make easier decisions and decisions that they know will have an impact. And so I bought this book just the other day called Regeneration. It's like a textbook. It's pretty huge, but they have this cool thing in the back, which are called create a punch list. And basically you can go to their website, which is, I'm like totally plugging this thing that I haven't even read the way. But it's called regeneration.org, and they have all these sample punch lists or like to-do lists to make your life more eco-friendly. And so there's like some things that we do that I also saw in here, but like a good example is set an annual goal for only buying 7 durable garments for your clothes per year. So anyway, there's a lot of good examples in that book. So I wanted to share that because I'm planning to make one for us as well. Some things that we do at our house, me and my wife, who also works at Nomadics. So she's a vegan. So and she's the most environmentally conscious person I've ever met. Like, she doesn't buy any leather. She doesn't eat any animal products. She doesn't like to wear wool. So like one of the biggest things is you could, pay attention to where your food comes from, eat less factory raised meat, because that has a big carbon footprint. Day to day, we like to look at our trash and turn down things that are optional. So like, for instance, we get coffee every day, but we bring our own coffee cup. So we don't, put that 1 cup of coffee in the trash every day. We try not to buy, if we buy clothes, this is kind of a minimalist thing, but like, buy clothes that are either recycled or made from a product that will biodegrade. And then probably the most important thing is to either don't buy clothes or buy clothes that will last a long time and that are durable. I buy a lot of clothes that are like plain colors because you can wear them with everything and you need less stuff. We're starting to buy more biodegradable products. So like for instance, we're on our phones, we have phone cases by Pellicase, which is a case that you can stick in the compost and it will biodegrade. There's another interesting company that our friend owns called Bite toothpaste bits. It's all plastic free. And so instead of a toothpaste tube, you can get a little pellet of toothpaste and pop it in your mouth and start brushing. And that way you don't have to use this plastic tube. And they make plastic free floss, and they just started making plastic free deodorant, which I just bought and I'm getting ready to try.
Yeah.
So there's lots of like little steps in your life that you can take, and I would just start giving it a Google and saying, you know, what are those things that I constantly throw out? Like instead of getting the plastic bag at the grocery store for each individual, for your mushrooms and for your tomatoes and whatever, we have these reusable bags, also from a friend called Sunshine Series, and you know, you just bring those every time, and then you don't have this collection of 15 bags every time you come home. And so I think that the important thing is to take those steps and you know, think about your day-to-day critically, and you could just spend a weekend doing it and say, okay, let's look at my day. Where does the trash come from? Where does my waste come from? And and Google some solutions for it. And then once you get that habit formed, then you're really making a pretty significant impact. I mean, let's say even half the people were to stop doing one particular behavior, that adds up to a lot. And that's so much less plastic waste and other types of waste that will end up in the ocean and in landfills. And it's waste that's really unnecessary if you buy reusable products or products that biodegrade or products that are made from waste, you know?
Definitely. Yeah, I think that's awesome. I mean, especially the spending a weekend and making a list. I think that's great. Thinking about it, you know, almost reverse engineering it, I think is genius. Because I think a lot of times it's like, okay, well, I can buy more clothes that are, you know, more sustainable, but my other clothes are just fine. So it's kind of that where to start. And I think that list is a super good way to do it, and just work backwards. So for you, do you remember the first product that you purchased that were like, hey, this is a consciously sustainable purchase that I'm making?
That is a good question. I think that I wasn't really thinking about it for a lot of my life. I mean, I would say like the stuff that I remember, when I moved to California, like even when I was in Colorado, it didn't feel like it was as big. And that was in 2008, 2009. Colorado is definitely, you know, today way more conscious of all this stuff. But I think when I moved to California and started like going to yoga for the first time and seeing what that audience consumed, you know, everyone would walk around with their mason jars, and they would, you know, they had like bamboo cutlery, and like the yoga audience in California, at least the ones that I was hanging around in San Clemente, they were the most. I think that's where I became like a little bit more conscious of all the different options. Like when you'd go to a juice shop, like I had never had juice as it is here in California until I moved to California, like vegetable juice, you know.
It's a culture for sure.
Yeah. And, you know, when you go there, they had all the products that were sustainable. And this was 8 years ago, 9 years ago. And so they just didn't do to go containers. They would sell you your juice in a mason jar and ask you to bring it back. And so I think that was my first like memory of buying things that were that. I mean, I always knew about like recycled cardboard, and we recycled growing up. And my parents were like the type of folks that would like drive their recycling really far away to recycle it before there was recycling, you know, pickup. So we always did stuff like that. But in terms of like buying things for a purpose of reducing your waste or something, yeah, I think it was California that was the first time I was buying things for that.
That's awesome. And so, kind of next steps for you and Nomadics. I mean, how can people kind of get involved with Nomadics, engage with you guys, purchase products? I mean, all that kind of stuff.
First of all, you can go to our website, which is nomadics.co, or you can find us on Instagram, which is at nomadicsco, to interact with us. And we care a lot about customer service and about interacting with everyone who talks to us. So you can shoot us a direct message and we'll respond. You can hit us up on Facebook and we'll respond. Our office manager is the one who responds to all those things. So like she sits right down the hall from me. So our favorite way to interact with customers is when you buy your towel, pick out the design that you like, and that towel is yours and that's your thing now. We love to see when people go somewhere with the towel, when they show us the activities they do with the towel. So if you're going to go do yoga on your towel, or you're going to take your towel on a trip to the Bahamas or to Peru, or to go to, a hot spring in Washington State or something, we absolutely love it if you send us a photo of that, or if you tag us and interact with us in some way, because we get those all the time. And it makes the community so special for everyone to see. Basically, you're going to inspire other people through what you're doing. And it doesn't have to be the most amazing photo or the most amazing activity. It's like, if you're just working out, or you're just going on a hike locally, or you're going somewhere exotic, all those things can inspire, other people to live a more active life, a more eco-friendly life, more positive life. And so that's what we would like to see, is people sharing those moments that they think will inspire other people.
And where's your favorite place to enjoy nature? I mean, you've had the opportunity to travel literally all over the world, which I think is so cool, by the way. But what's your favorite place to enjoy nature?
So I'll say my favorite place that I ever went to enjoy nature was the Annapurna Trek in Nepal, because you go through so many different climates. I don't know if climate's the right word, but so many different like environments on that trek. It was a 13-day trek. You're in the Himalayas, you go up to 17,000 feet or something like that. You hike through villages, you drink yak milk and all kinds of crazy stuff. And it's also a really important place because it's as far away or as high up as you can get. Like Central Asia is one of the most one of the least visited by tourist places. I don't know if Nepal counts or not, but and you go on that hike and it's pristine and beautiful, and you'll see the most beautiful vistas, and you'll still see people throwing trash on the trail and polluting and that kind of stuff. And so I think that's why it's important to see. It's like, that's a place that needs to be protected. But that's one of my favorite places, like to wake up in a hut in the Himalayas and look out. And I remember there was like a blowing flag because the wind is blowing so crazy and it's freezing cold outside, and you're going to wake up at 4 a.m. and just start hiking in the dark. And it was just one of the coolest feelings I've ever felt. My other favorite that I'll share, which is a little more tangible and easy for people to get to, is I really love Medellin. So Medellin is called the City of Eternal Spring, and the climate is like perfect all the time. And that's a big city. It's 2 million people or so. But once you drive up the hill and go out of the city, you're in farmland, you're in really temperate kind of jungly stuff. And then there's also coffee farms and little towns the whole way through. And so that's also one of my favorite places. Colombia has one of the like most exciting assortment of birds that migrate there and back up to North America. And so it's a really cool place to like look at birds and different types of plants and fruits, and everything just grows there. It's amazing.
That's so cool. And the fact that you've been able to travel that much, and the amount of hiking and very, very cold environments you've been in for long periods of time. So from the skiing to hiking the Annapurna Trail, I mean, you're in California. It's quite warm there. Do you have like an affinity for cold weather in those environments? Because I mean, I think it kind of takes some mental strength to, feel comfortable and enjoy those types of things.
Yeah, well, I mean, I was 23 when I did the Annapurna trek, or maybe 22, and so I think I had like a certain resilience to whatever came my way at that time. But like I do, so we live in San Clemente. This is a microclimate. It really doesn't actually get that hot here. It's like kind of taps out at 80 most of the year, and then it's been like we didn't even get a heat wave this year. It's been like pretty much 75 the whole year, which is so it's not really hot here. But yeah, I mean, I definitely like going to cold places, but it's also where you see some of the best stuff. Me and my partner Chase and one of our friends did a trek in Patagonia during the summer, but it was cold still. And I think, yeah, just like, layering up and going on a hike and cooking your food in a stove is just, it's kind of the good stuff.
That's awesome. And what's kind of your hope for the future of just sustainability in general? How you want to see the world going in a direction?
Yeah, that's a big question, huh?
Yeah, it is.
Well, my hope would be that we have some pretty clear issues that could be addressed, and it feels like we're not addressing them very quickly. It's like not a priority for some folks that it should be a priority for. I think that looking at industry, manufacturing, anything like steel or, oil production or things like that. My hope is that consumers can, like everyone listening to this podcast, can start voting with their dollar and making it clear to their local governments and to their federal government and to, if you're abroad, to your government there, that these are your top priorities. You don't want to have these fires and floods and everything dominate life for the next, like it's going to be a reality for our generation and probably for the next generation, but it doesn't have to get worse and worse and worse forever. It can level out and come down. And so we just had a kid, and so I think about what his life will be like in the future. And I think that I'm optimistic because there is a lot of change that you see almost monthly in terms of the products that are available. And you look at e-bikes, and if everyone started using e-bikes to commute that last mile, that would be a big difference. And so if American cities aren't built for that necessarily, but some are, and some could be more bike friendly. And so yeah, I just think that consumers and regular people need to start making these small changes and changing their buying behavior and demanding more from their coffee shops and their grocery stores and their government, and then things will change. I think the small changes in everyone's lives absolutely matter, and that if you make them, then the markets will respond.
Yeah, agreed. Well, Zach, thanks so much for just taking the time on this entire podcast, diving into Nomadix, your product, your story. I think it's incredible. For those that are listening, go grab one of these towels. I mean, the moment you try one, you're going to be like, yeah, I need this every day in my life. Especially if you live an outdoor life. It is literally the one towel solution. So, I mean, Zach, thank you so much for your time on all this. And I'm just so grateful that you took the time to discuss everything. And I'm really excited for the future of Nomadix. I think you guys got a lot of really exciting stuff coming down the pipeline.
Thank you so much. And thank you for giving, brands and people like us a platform to share some of our thoughts here. Hopefully it was valuable to some people. And I'm looking forward to listening to the rest of your podcast.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Sustainable Goat. Zach was great to have on the show and share the story of Nomadix. Their products are seriously amazing and the only towel that you'll ever need. Links to their store and socials will be in the show notes below, or if you happen to be in an REI, check them out there. And if you've been enjoying these episodes, share your favorite one with a friend or post it on social media. Your support goes a long way, and the more that the community grows, the more impact that we can have on the world. So thanks again for listening to this episode of Sustainable Goat.